Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, and today's video, the topic is a spiritually bankrupt society is doomed to fail. And there's been a lot of indications lately that America, I wouldn't say is a completely spiritually bankrupt place, but it is greatly wounded, and there's very deep issues, and it's something that I've noticed for years because I became a traveler when I was maybe 19, 20 years old when I first studied abroad. And ever since then, I've been talking about the cultural differences between America and other places in the world. And America definitely has some plus sides, but there's something deep, systemic, and really rotten, really corrupt about the kind of the spiritual fabric of the United States. And what we're seeing is that this is coming home to roost. And it's taken an extreme turn, and something tells me things are only going to keep getting worse from here. This is the time of great change. This is 2020. It has a lot of psychics and a lot of people with inside knowledge, and a lot of people have foreseen 2020 as being really the beginning of things going. Kind of a period of turmoil, turbulation, and leading up to maybe some kind of a new redeeming chapter in the human experience, I suppose, right? So really what I'm getting at is it that difficult to understand the differences between right and wrong? So I'm going to say it's not that difficult. Rather, in a healthy society, it shouldn't be that difficult to know what is moral behavior and what isn't. What will hurt everybody, even if you get short-term gain or short-term pleasure out of it. A spiritually bankrupt society is one where there is such little wisdom, growth, and self-awareness in the general population that as soon as you give somebody, for example, I don't know, some police officers, just a little bit of authority, just a little bit of power, what do? They become tyrants. And this began, I would say, during the pandemic crisis, which of course is still going on, when we began hearing about just about almost anybody with authority, whether it's a cop or a security guard, doing just horrible things to people, kicking people off their own properties, and being tyrants, and just seizing upon that little bit of authority that they were given to try to become gods over everybody else. And would a spiritually rich society create people who would feel a need to do that? No. When you have a society with broken people, a lack of values, a broken culture dominated by psychological programming, by pop culture, by powers that be, then you end up with a society that has very broken people in it. And broken people are dangerous people. Broken people, you don't want to give them power. You don't want to give them any authority because they will enact their insecurities out onto everybody else. So that being said, we've also seen that the corrupt underbelly of this spiritual decay in America has come to the surface then in the response. Because again, how difficult is it to know the difference between right and wrong? So is it the proper path? Are you aligned to what is right, what is just, what is moral? If you respond to to the murder of an African American man by going to an African American man's small business or shop or restaurant or bar or store, retail store, whatever it is, and then smashing the windows and taking all that small business's items. Is that the moral and just thing to do? And is it the moral and just thing to do to see that happening and then rationalize it and defend it and say, well, you got to scramble a few eggs to make an omelet? Is it really that difficult to see what is wrong behavior and what is correct behavior? Why is it that in older societies where there is a spread of wisdom through the generations, even though many of these societies have their own problems which can be pretty extreme, it seems like there's a certain certain things that don't get crossed. So Gandhi created a non-violent revolution that kicked the British out of India. And again, non-violent. India, of course, has its problems. India has had very serious violence, but there was a certain line that wasn't crossed when people kind of systemically knew what is the moral, what is the correct, just thing to do when we see each other as equals, when we see each other as part of the same source consciousness. What is a dividing point? People born with just enough values, understanding of themselves and the universe that they would know almost inherently that, hey, a peaceful, non-violent revolution is possible, and it's the best way to go. Now, if you have a spiritually decayed society that doesn't teach values, doesn't pass on wisdom, doesn't study, self-growth, doesn't have a backbone, at least, for example, Hinduism, for all its faults, and I think sometimes silly beliefs in Hinduism, it's still a spiritual backbone. So again, maybe that's why Gandhi was able to accomplish what he did. So if you have a society where people are being raised that kind of in a solipsistic manner by being taught, maybe indirectly, that they're the only ones who exist and nobody else matters, then there is no higher virtue or purpose. When they're taught materialism, like philosophical materialism, the universe is meaningless. Now they have that nihilism attached to that as well. Then they're fed a diet of pop culture, stuff they see in music videos and TV, and they think, well, this is what I have to aspire to. All of these selfish pursuits, that's all that matters, and get ahead of everybody else. Now, what happens when tens of millions of people are brought up in this manner with no wisdom? Then they will take an incident like this and decide, well, this is just a perfect excuse to finally get my share, to get what's due to me. And then they will go in and smash windows and steal TVs out of small businesses. And look, I know some of you all communist types of people out there are going to say, well, look, if you're smashing a Target, that's a $60 billion, $70 billion corporation. They can handle it if you go in there and steal from the rich. I don't agree with that behavior, but I guess they can make an argument about this. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing small businesses and just anyone get terrorized by the rioting, which is, of course, look, you have this peaceful protests happening too. And I get that, but it's been completely drowned out by these riots. Many people believe being orchestrated, being agitated by foreign influencers because they know how susceptible and, again, spiritually bankrupt America is. So let's take any country that wants to get the best of us, Russia, China, you name it, or maybe deeper entities that are within our own country, or manipulators, or billionaire private interests. Any of them could come along and agitate things into what it is by just pulling the puppet strings a little bit. So any kind of peaceful demonstrations have been totally blotted out by the agitated, aggressive demonstrations. So we're definitely looking at something that is extremely alarming. And again, it wouldn't be happening if there was any kind of a spiritual core in America. How do we get that back? Well, the public school systems have to be overhauled. Some kind of philosophy has to be taught to students. There has to be people going on an inward path, and that has to be part of education. The Western materialist mindset kind of mixed itself in this unholy matrimony with, again, pop culture, psychological manipulation, and a lack of values, a lack of wisdom in a relatively new country like the USA. And so, it's created this phenomenon. Now, not everybody in America is like this, of course, but there was a deep enough dark seed in the USA that this kind of thing would happen. The proof to me is just growing up in the States and how there were basically places in any city that I've lived in the USA that are so dangerous you just can't go there. Look, Europe has a lot of faults, but I've never been to a section of any city outside of the USA, with the exception maybe of like Mexico, and I haven't spent that much time in wherever, South America. But nowhere else, this includes whether it's Asia or whether it's the Middle East, Europe, places I've been to in the world, I've never seen a section of any city as dangerous as parts of the USA. And I mean, like, you go into a Circle K and then there's just people clearly on meth, people with psychotic looks in their eyes, people with clearly who have like negative entity attachments, practically controlling their movements, extremely dark energies, things that really are, terrifying. Like when we talk about lower astral realms on this channel, like those lower astral realms, I'll take you to one right now. Go back home to Tucson, Arizona, and I don't know, keep going down Craycroft Road past Broadway down to past 22nd Street, and I'll show you some dark planes of existence here in this world. So what do you do when every city has these like dark underbellies of people of massive crime, drug abuse, and people just out for themselves and in a constant state of trying to get one over on another person. Look at the unbelievable murder rates in the USA, unbelievable amounts of gun-related violence, and you'll see just how deep that spiritual decay goes. All that's happened and all we're seeing is that underbelly has come up to the surface. It's always been there, but now it's just spreading forth across the greater population. And I don't believe it has anything to do with any ethnic persuasion, because there's a great diversity of people in the USA, and I've seen the same great diversity in the dark underbelly. The issue is the spiritual decay. It doesn't matter white people, black people, Asian people. I've seen facets of that spiritual decay in among every racial group that populates America, depending on who you encounter in these bad sides of town. And again, it's it's a matter of something really twisted in our culture. But at the end of the day, how do you get over that? Well, maybe it all has to come to the surface, and there needs to be lots and lots and lots and lots of people watching these types of things happen and unfold, and be able to think critically and look introspectively and maybe come from a little bit of a position of wisdom and realize this is not who I am. It's not how I want to treat my community. It's not how I want to treat the people around me. And the same, of course, can be said for people whose ambition is to gain some little bit of authority so they can make up for some kind of insecurity that they have, so they can exert their power over other people. And in the case of what we've seen among authority figures, bosses, security guards, and cops, dating back at least the last couple of months up until this incident that happened last week. Again, if there was more wisdom, if there was more conscious growth and thought expressed by these people, by their families, by the culture, people wouldn't feel like, well, I need to become this authority figure because I need to make up for this missing thing inside myself. They'd already have that inside themselves, and there wouldn't be any missing hole to plug. So those are my thoughts about that. If you like this, please hit that subscribe button and share this video if you think other people can benefit. But I have a few more thoughts before we go. Please subscribe to this channel if you want to see this little operation and these late night ramblings keep going. I'll have some more formal videos coming up again soon about like afterlife related subjects, but I've had a lot in my mind lately, not just from the stuff on the news, other stuff. So I've been a little bit slower lately. I'm trying to get back up to speed again. But ultimately, what we're seeing is stuff again that I was prepared for back at the end of last year, because I've been paying attention to certain insiders talking about this very thing that was going to happen. Down. I didn't hear anyone mention a virus, but I heard about this happening from different sources. Kind of from the get-go. And I'm almost not surprised to see it all happen. This is kind of a converging point. This is an awakening era. There's different ways to look at it, but it's there's a lot of different interpretations from different mediums and past life therapists and alleged like exopolitical insiders like Randy Kramer, who I've talked about in this channel if you search through the archives. There's different interpretations about the current events happening right now, including the pandemic. And probably if you like go into some of the really esoteric stuff, like maybe like Seth, for example, it'll be shown that even if things are happening seemingly in a completely natural occurrence, like there's no conspiracy behind it, there is still a deeper meaning behind it all, in the sense that energies are coming to a head. And it's that point when energies are coming to a head that again we'll see great changes on the planet. Somewhere in this mix, I'm willing to bet the UFO subject is going to come up. Now it sounds crazy. Like, how can this virus pandemic and civil unrest leading to a possible civil war in America, how can you tie UFOs into this? Well, think about how everything's been building up toward this. You had the Pentagon officially disclosing UFOs, like was a month ago, but yeah, like 4 or 5 weeks ago, officially disclosing the existence of UFOs, and all of that other work that was building up. There is something coming to a head there as well. That's been a major energy that's been being bottled up, and that's about to explode. So we're going to see a lot of things explode as this new decade continues, and some of it's going to result in a lot of pandemonium, but some of it will also result in major changes, I think. Possibly UFOs could be included. Possibly afterlife topics could be included in those changes as well, because it's energy being bottled up, and it can't stay bottled up anymore. That could result in war, famine, and destruction, but also lots of changes as well. So just keep that in mind as well. Whew, okay, it's like almost 1 a.m. here. I need to go to sleep. I was trying to figure out how am I going to put this video together. How do I collect my thoughts into what I wanted to say? And I think I did a good job. It's I think I put out there what was on my mind. And again, we can get back into some of the meatier topics maybe tomorrow or the next day. But thanks for watching. If you want to keep this work going, then I encourage you to become a patron over at patreon.com/afterlife topics, or just donate directly at the PayPal. It's cyrus@cyruskirkpatrick.com. It's in the links are in the description down below if you want to help support this work and help me continue on with this and on with the next projects, and try to take this stuff to the next level somehow, which is something I hope to do soon. All right, this is Cyrus. Thanks for watching this, and I'll see you on the next video.